As a former US litigator who spent a lot of her time in practice thinking there must be a better way. Or as she put it very recently, how do we avoid all this really, and then there was some colorful language work that I don't actually want to do. She decided that instead of waiting for that way to develop, she'd rather be part of the effort in making the change. So she now works with DLA Piper's CEO, Simon Levine, developing the radical change strategy and initiatives that are needed for the firm to transform, and Jana leads the firm's overall program of change in their team and works with clients to define
what some of the opportunities are that we're seeing, but also some of the challenges that this generative AI brings and large language models bring for us. And when I speak about us, I'll probably default back into the law firm point of view, but I am trying to have a more uplifted view of the industry as a whole. Does this work? Doesn't like it. Okay. So should I just... All right, okay, thanks. So what is a landscape? Time. And this goes back hundreds of years. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but where this came from was when barristers, who are the guys that argue in court, they had a little pocket in the back of their robes. And actually, if you wanted them to continue to argue for you, you would put more money in the back of the pocket, right? So we've been time-based for a very long time. It's kind of fundamental as to how law firms operate, how we get remunerated, how you get incentivized, everything. And it's not just on an hourly basis, we're talking 6-minute increments of time. What we do for every 6 minutes of our lives, well, in the office, or I guess at home, but at work. And actually, when we first started talking to Mark, and nearby he's here as well, that was actually really exciting, right? Wow, what other industry takes all that effort to track every 6 minutes of your life of what you're doing, what tasks you're doing? And we have a lot of data on the tasks we're doing. Again, that's how we get remunerated, that's how we get our bonus, that's how we make our profits, that's how we make our revenue. It's time. And that's important for what comes next. Can you go to the next slide, please? The landscape. There's a couple reasons I have this. One is our data is a hot mess. Right? Most law firms have a lot of stuff everywhere, and it kind of looks like this. Actually paper form, but also our document management system, our DMS. People are saving things under whatever file name they want and whatever structure they want on their desktop. It's a mess, okay? The other aspect here, though, that's very key is it's shredded. Because one thing that really differentiates the legal industry and lawyers from other professions is our client confidentiality. The lawyers are the guys you go to when you're in trouble, when you need to get some advice in a really tricky situation. And that's an oath that we take not only to our individual clients, but to the rule of law at large. So we have oaths and this core ethics embedded within all that we do as lawyers from the very beginning. As baby lawyers, we're taught that. We all take an oath, not just to our clients, but to the rule of law, to democracy, to the system itself. You go to the next one. I love this as well. I don't know if you probably don't follow him because he's very legal oriented, but he's hilarious. He does a lot of TikTok videos. And this just highlights it. And if you could see, I think it was like 8,000 people like this because it resonated so much with lawyers, right? Final, dot, final, exclamation, actually final, don't use others. Like this is literally naming conventions, right? It's funny, but it's not so funny when you're trying to drive change and working with data scientists at a large global law firm spanning over 90 countries and 90 offices in 45 countries. When you're sitting there thinking, wow, it would be really great if we could get some intel as to the last 5 contracts we executed in the UK that had to do with this person. That would be really cool. How the hell do you find that? Well, I guess we could call up each and every single partner that works in that group and ask them if they've done that and where they stored it, what the matter names is, and what they then named the contract. So you can see how, even if we had the ideas of wanting to change and wanting to create the efficiencies and trying to create these amazing models, we kind of fell down at the first hurdle. It wasn't for a lack of idea, it wasn't for a lack of desire, well, maybe a bit of desire, but it really fell down at this part of how do you make sense of this mess of stuff that we've got spread across the globe, in our case at DLA, in various storage systems with various naming conventions, and that's before we even get to our email systems and anything else, right? So we were quite limited in what we were able to do up until, well, now. And I guess if you can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, last thing about the legal industry that I think is important to know and it differentiates us from others. It's a very fragmented industry. The highest grossing revenue law firm in the world still only takes about 1% of the total market, that you can in the legal industry. 1%. So even if we did leverage all of our data as one of the world's largest law firms, that might not actually qualify as what others would call big data. So that's another aspect of the legal industry. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. This is just kind of highlighting in greater detail some of the challenges we had. The culture, as I said, we were supposed to be secret. If Mark came to me tomorrow and told me, I hope this isn't true, that he had done something potentially very bad, I would not be able to tell anyone else in my firm unless they were working on his case. So we actually ring fence and make a lot of our data very private. It's important. It's core to what we do and who we are as lawyers. Somewhat problematic when you go into trying to create large language models or even any language model based on the data and insights and knowledge that we possess as a law firm. The other aspect that we have is, again, from this culture, we just have a lot of lawyers think, well, they're pretty intelligent. And we like to think that every single case that we work on is special, it's unique, it's different, it needs my mind on it. And so this idea that you would create naming conventions or data governance or data structures that go across everything that everyone needs to comply with is antithetical to a lot of the ways lawyers work or perceive their work and the value that they bring to our clients. All right, that's the landscape. You go forward. Yeah. Magic, why do I have this up here? Because Mark and I were talking, and I actually thought you would mention magic in your speech, so this was supposed to be a good follow-on. And he would say, it's not magic. And I was like, well, it kind of feels like magic a bit to the legal industry. Given all the context I just said and all the challenges that we had kind of stacked against us trying to do anything with the data that we possessed, generative AI and LLMs kind of feel like magic. But as Dr. Lee said, she goes, what's the legal industry thinking about this? I said, the kind of sentiment is, oh, fuck, right? It's a moment of shit, it's actually happened, right? As someone that's been trying to drive change for 7-ish years in the legal industry, to be very honest, there wasn't much of a burning platform. A lot of people would say, you know, Big Four is coming for you, Big Tech's coming for you, AI is coming for you, blah, 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 blah. And we just sit there and never know, right? Profits were going up across the board for most law firms year after year, after year after year after year. Nothing, there wasn't even we couldn't even see smoke, yeah? So that wasn't really working for us. But this is quite different. You know, Goldman Sachs saying that 44% of legal tasks can be automated in the very short-term future. We're smelling the smoke, we're feeling the heat. People are waking up, people are thinking, what the hell are we going to do? And if you go to the next slide, I'll go into each of these in a bit, but the high level thing to know is every lawyer does at least a little bit of each of them. So there's not going to be one lawyer who sat there thinking, don't do any of those four, I'm fine. No, every lawyer does at least a little bit of each of those. So no one's really safe in that regard in the legal industry, right? And so what does that mean? Legal research, and this opens up an interesting question on training. Again, I don't know how many of you have ever been in a training contract at a law firm or were a baby lawyer, but actually what they do is they kind of make you go through the fire. The fire of going through, and in my day, it was actually like trying to find case law and reading and reading and highlighting and reading and reading. And that was part of what we thought actually made a good lawyer. Can you find the research? Can you dig through? Can you spot the things that are necessary? Can you troll through tons and tons of documents and find the one that will make the case? Generative AI, it can do all of that, right? It can go through the reams of data that are out there, the reams of case law, the cases that are everywhere around the world, come back with the ones that are relevant, and then even do the summarization for you. That takes up a lot of time currently in legal firms and law firms, a lot of time. It's a lot of what juniors do. Document generation. Dr. Lee even asked me, she goes, well, now with, what's it called? Copilot on Word, what are lawyers gonna do, right? Because as Nearby and I were discussing, it's not just that the plugin sits in Word, but can actually go into one of the world's largest database of case laws and law that exists in the world. So as you're typing a contract or a memorandum or an argument, you can use generative AI to pull back the relevant sources that you need to quote. So that's a huge difference and change as well. Providing general legal information. Again, there's a lot of laws out there, and this has started already, even before generative AI. In the US, there used to be a thing called like Pay My Ticket. And this guy got really annoyed. He got a parking ticket, and he was a law student, I think at Stanford. He was definitely in California. And he couldn't figure out if he actually needed to pay the ticket or not. And even as someone that was a law student, went through, Googled it, found all these things, sort of contradictory, very confusing, couldn't figure it out. He thought, well, if I'm having problems, everybody probably has some problems. Do I pay this ticket or not? And he used AI to help that. He created an app, and people could go in, you'd upload your ticket, you'd tell the parameters of when you got it, where it was, and it would answer your question. Nah, you don't have to pay it. Or, yeah, you do, send this letter with it, right? So that's already started, but on a very small scale basis within legal. Now with generative AI, we can scale it, we can think about all the other applications and a much more higher level of advice being given as well. And with legal analysis, I've kind of already spoken about it, so let's move on. This is kind of a highlight of what's happening in the market already. Of course, we're up there, right? DLA right here. We have our Chief Data Officer, and we've already brought in an open AI-powered assistant called Co-Counsel. One other law firm has done that as well. They have used something called Harvey, which I don't think, is Harvey up there? Harvey's not up there. Yeah, Harvey's up there. Yep, A&O. And they actually just merged with a large US law firm, so now they're competing to be one of the world's largest law firms as well, also using OpenAI and generative AI in their law firms. So we're starting to get there. I'm not going to read each of those. Can you go to the next one, please? Magic. I actually do think it's quite magic. Not just because of the technology, but actually because of this cultural shift that Mark mentioned that's part of my job as change maker. It's causing people to give pause. Not just to say, how is this impacting my job, but actually to really think, what's the value I bring as a lawyer, right? If I'm not going to be spending all this time doing that work of the research, finding the pertinent laws, summarizing that for someone, and doing a bit of analysis, what value do I bring? It's actually quite an existential question if you get into it. But I love that because the law, as it has been for decades, hasn't really been serving a lot of people. It's been serving a quite narrow narrow market. If you go to the next slide, actually. I'm just whizzing through my slides. The unmet legal demand, just from the UK alone, is equivalent to, I forgot the numbers, 11.4 billion pounds. The total legal market in the UK is 32 billion pounds. That's a huge market of people that just can't access lawyers, don't know how to access lawyers, or, quite frankly, think that lawyers are too damn expensive. And so it is quite magical. Maybe we don't feel it as a law firm because we're sitting there thinking, what will we do next? But actually, the opportunities that this gives society at large, the general public, people that need lawyers and can't get lawyers, people that need access to justice and can't find the route. This is amazing. It can be amazing. And what other opportunities are we seeing? And I know you're going to hear about this later, but it also gives rise to regulation. It actually really scared me when I saw Dr. Lee say, high schoolers can now do this. You know, like high schoolers, not because I'm thinking, wow, the tech's so easy, but I'm thinking, I know what I was a high schooler at one point. I remember the decisions that were made when I was in high school. I remember the attitude I had and my friends had as a high school student. And we were not really worried about the grander repercussions, about the actions that we were taking at that moment. It was about that moment. And why am I mentioning that? Because I think, given the context that I said before about lawyers having ethics as part of who we are as a profession, this is a huge opportunity for lawyers to step up in a couple ways. One, with regulation, right? Should we be allowing high schoolers to create generative AI models that get sent out to the world to use? What would the repercussions be? What can the implications be? What could happen with that? I don't know. I'm not picking on him in general because I don't know the one he created. But that is actually something that we should give pause to, right? So on the one hand is regulation, and there's been a lot of discussion that lawyers are having. I was in Scotland last week, and there were judges, legal societies, regulators, all in a room. We had a bit of a think tank as to, well, what should this look like? How could we be addressing this? And a lot of discussions, and it ranged from, UK did Brexit, so maybe we don't do anything, all the way to, actually, there's a lot of laws in existence that we need to pull upon, and it should be a harm-based analysis. So instead of creating an entire new, like, GDPR-esque, I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, right? GDPR-esque massive legal framework that covers all of it in this space, maybe actually we should take a step back and say, we do have laws in place, and maybe we should actually instead look at what harm or potential harm could this technology, product, software create, and regulate that harm rather than the technology itself, especially given the rate at which this technology is developing. I think more and more, at least in that room, more we're leaning towards that model than doing a GDPR-esque all singing, all dancing law specifically tailored for generative AI. And the other aspect of that, though, is, and this is what I'm pushing for, so I have a lot of associates, we're thousands of lawyers at DLA, and some of them have actually come up to me and said, well, what does this mean for my job? What happens to us? And I said, well, I quite frankly don't know. But I think it's part of your job now to start to figure it out, right? And that's who's going to have a job, is people and law firms that can actually start to think about how do we leverage this? What does this mean? What does it now mean to bring value as a lawyer, and then start to do that and think about the outcomes we're trying to achieve rather than the tasks that we're currently doing and those being automated. And the other thing what I kind of tell them is, and it's not just about thinking about what you could be doing in a law firm, providing pure legal advice, but actually, wouldn't it be great if you could have lawyers that actually, maybe some of you would say this is the worst idea ever. No, but actually having the lawyers work alongside as the sounding board, as a kind of ethical voice while these things were being developed. Getting the lawyers to understand actually what was going on so they could have these conversations. And we've been talking a lot around what we're calling bilinguality, which is not so much that I'm trying to teach all of my lawyers to code, although it looks very easy now, so maybe we will. But it's not about that, but it's actually understanding, well, what does that code do? How does this work in general? How can I have a conversation with someone that's creating these products and then bring in my expertise, my ethical view, the bit that I'm really good at as a lawyer, combine that to ensure that, well, some of those harms never happen in the first place, right? And that, to me, is really exciting. And encouraging, and interesting, and engaging. And there's different universities that are thinking about how they do that. So a woman from Oxford, she actually created a course that combines computer science students with law students. And they're both learning about each other's fields because of this, right? How can we enable both sides to understand a bit more about laws, regulation, ethics, and morality, and implications beyond the technical capabilities? Also, how can we enable lawyers to understand what's going on, what's being built, and how? This is a very boring slide to end on, but that's my last slide. And the other space that I think is really fascinating and a huge opportunity, and a bit of what I think is magical, because I think it's exciting, is this whole aspect of trust, right? As I said at the beginning, people go to lawyers because you trust them, right? You murder someone, you want a lawyer. Do something really horrible, you need a lawyer. Why? Because you trust them. Because they'll keep it secret. Because they'll advise you. Because they'll guide you through it. Because they'll tell you what your rights are. Because they'll try to get the best result for you within the parameters of the law. And I think that puts lawyers and the legal industries in a very special position when thinking about trust going forward. Especially in the space of deep fakes with videos and imagery and even voice, coming out there. What is the truth? Who can you trust? How do you know? Is there a way, and this was something we explored, I'm getting all my weeks confused because it's been pretty full on since this launch. Last week, with a major tech company, was what could we as a law firm be doing in that space? Was there a way that lawyers could take that inherent trust that we've built with our clients and that trusted relationship and expand it into the future as well? Beyond, yes, you trust me with your case, and into what can I trust, full stop, right? To get a little bit more granular, what are we doing? That might be more interesting to you rather than this kind of space that I like to be in, of philosophizing about where we can go and what this means existentially for lawyers going forward. A lot of talk around risk management. New laws like GDPR come up and they impact businesses like this, right? And they impact them at almost every single level. Compliance issues, where you're going to put your data, where you can take data, where you even want to be operating, because maybe some companies decided that's just too much. No, thank you, won't sell there, right? It can have a massive impact on businesses and our clients. And there's more and more regulation that comes up all the time, right? With deglobalization and all these countries and a rise in nationalism, we're seeing a lot more regulations coming at a very, very fast pace, in particular in the ESG space. And our clients, quite frankly, are inundated. And they don't know when to look. They don't know if they're up to date. They don't know if they're missing something. They don't know if they're going to get fined tomorrow. They don't even know if they're in compliance at the moment. So this space around risk management, or what we would call horizon scanning, is huge for us. The fact that you could then start to layer in generative AI on that is huge, right? If we can be scanning all of the laws around the world, and before they even become law, when we think things are going to become law, and then we can start flagging and advising that to our clients. Hey, we know that you're operating in Italy. Hey, OpenAI, we know you're wanting to launch in Italy. They just banned you, right? Bad example maybe, but because that was more instantaneous. But being able to flag and move into this more insight-driven advisory space as a law firm, as a lawyer, is hugely exciting for us. For whatever reason, and this goes to what our CEO, he likes to tell this story about Frank Crisp, who used to advise the Beatles. He had a massive, massive mansion and lived a very nice life. And this isn't just about making money, actually. But the reason he was so successful was he was the guy. I have a question about this. Go to my lawyer. I wonder if I can do that. Go to my lawyer. Getting a divorce, go to my lawyer. Want to do a new tour, go to my lawyer. The lawyer was the first person you went to, that very trusted advisor. Through the years, we've seen our position slip. Right? PwC, some of the consultancies have come in, and the lawyers have kind of been delegated to this very end bit of the road where it's like, the deal's been done and decided, or the deal's been decided, these people have advised it, we need you guys to document that in a contract, right? That's not the space we want to be in. So the fact that we could start creating generative AI models and start to advise our clients on, we're spotting this, we're tracking this, we're pulling in data, not just from our own messy, convoluted data sets, but from beyond and outside, is really exciting for us to get back in front, telling people, I'm seeing this coming down the track, this is the path you should be taking, or you shouldn't buy that company there because of these reasons, etc. The other thing that Nearby's been working on, am I allowed to say? I think so. He's been working on, as one of the world's largest law firms, we have a lot of contracts, actually. And it's been a long slog because it's been very difficult in the past to find all those contracts of a similar type, to train a model, to then do something with it. But now, because we have LLMs, we've been able to bypass all of that. And Nearby has actually created a model now where we have a specific, it's a proof of concept, a specific type of contract. It can now extract the pertinent clauses or terms, provisions like limits of liability, how long, duration of the contract, etc. Not only can it extract, but then it can start to do an analysis as to how those terms impact on risk to our client. And that's very exciting for us. It's very exciting for us, and this probably brings it full circle, because that's an idea that our lawyers had 7 years ago. And we're now at a point, since getting access to these generative AI models, that Nearby has been able to do that in about a month. We waited 7 years to getting it done in a month. That's, in and of itself, I think, it just highlights the impact that we're seeing and the speed at which we can actually start to execute things in legal. I'm told I have 5 minutes left. So, in sum, we're a special type of person with special circumstances, or at least we like to think so. We like to keep things hidden. We like to keep things secret for very good reason. But actually, there's so much opportunity for generative AI. And I would say the most exciting for me is getting in front of, so that we can avoid the harms that could be caused with regulation, and also helping perhaps co-create and getting in there very early stages. And the other bit is, again, the access to justice. And that, to me, is the most exciting. And working with, I'm on another kind of group with a bunch of judges, actually looking at how you can start to digitize the court systems. Because even if you did get a lawyer, it can take a ridiculous amount of time to get heard. And that's not real justice. Thank you.
We have time for questions, so Kim.
I think I have this argument with embarrassing quite often. Some of the knowledge is yet that generative AI can get create an argument for them. But I think that there's sometimes going to be looking up and say, will the valuable barristers then not start to turn more towards their, and it's supposed to be already, but much more so their oration skills, how personal, how much they need to judge, and then speeding on from that, could we end up in a situation then when judges are taken to one side, and does that one also carry a massively inherent ethical as well as this? I think it's a two-part question.
I would say it's a three-part question, but okay.
Jana, do you mind repeating?
Okay, so
Sorry.
repeating a question might be harder than answering the question. So it started with, I don't have generative AI in my brain. She started with, actually, she's been having conversation with barristers who are still not yet convinced that generative AI could help them prepare or their arguments, right? Or draft their arguments or get them along the way. What do I think about that? Second, do I think that generative AI could also be impacting judges and their role within the court system or justice system? Third, would that have ethical implications?
It was also about the barristers becoming much more about oration skills.
Yes. So I would say yes. And we've had a lot of discussion about that in numerous roundtables, all sorts of dinners and everything else. And I think that's where, and actually this came through in your panel yesterday, which is really interesting, this weird nugget